Back to A Guide to Funny Faces. Let me have a little drink here. Okay. I shot awake, panting heavily, my clothes sticking to my skin due to all the sweat. My eyes darted around the room, but everything was quiet. I seemed to be saved. A nightmare. Seems like I just had a nightmare. I was chased by some kind of animal or monster, and there was some eerie plant. I had forgotten most of the dream, but I knew that it must have been terrifying. The pulsing pain in my head slowly subsided. I took a deep breath and kept mumbling to myself that it had all been a dream, nothing more. After calming down, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging in the back of my mind. A look out of the window confirmed that it was still night. I must have either slept for a whole day or only a few hours. Considering how tired I was, it must have been the latter. I left the bedroom to retry the doors, just in case. They were still locked. I really wanted to go home and take a shower. I smelled my clothes, and they indeed had started to smell slightly sour. This place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd be better off out in the streets, even if it was still dark, and I was missing my wallet. All I needed to do was find a police station. They'd definitely be able to help me out. As I wandered around, I grew more and more aware of how big this town was. The buildings were pretty high, and nature was rather scarce. But it was strange how empty the streets were, considering how many people must be living in this town. My ears began to pick up the subtle sound of laughter. The sound turned to an unease in my empty stomach. It was awfully late for such a public crowd. There wasn't cheering or rounds of applause, just laughter. Loud and obnoxious laughter that didn't seem to pause for breath nor subside or grow. It became louder as I approached the town center, becoming a wave of commotion by what sounded to be a massive crowd. They just laughed and laughed and kept laughing. It sounded dreadful. I was tempted to change course and avoid the town center. Yet this direction was my best bet for finding an inn or police station. These priorities outweighed my sense of danger. I pressed on. The laughter was bellowing with hundreds of voices until I finally could glimpse the source of the commotion. The crowd gathered around a performer who was doing something to make them laugh. I strained to see the action peeking through the small gaps in the people while keeping a safe distance. The group was just too dense. I couldn't see any details. Curiosity overwhelmed me, and I started pushing through the people. They seemed to melt away without paying much attention. As I approached, I passed a table with books. I couldn't make out their title, but I could see something that resembled two masks on the cover. Paying it no mind, I pressed onward. I couldn't understand what was happening. The performer wasn't making any sounds. I couldn't make out any movement from beyond the crowd either. What was so entertaining? What I saw was the opposite of funny. It was horrifying. What was wrong with his head? He turned his hips so that everyone in the crowd could have a clear view, as if he didn't want anyone to miss it. Why are people laughing at this? A bystander heard me. I don't know, his face just seemed so funny. I mean, look at it. I stared at him in disbelief. He and the others really didn't seem to find this funny. He and the others really did seem to find this funny. Were they seeing something I wasn't? No matter how I looked at it, it didn't seem like anything other than disturbing. I averted my gaze and walked away. I wanted nothing to do with this madness. While continuing to comb through the town center, while trying to keep my distance from the crowd, I noticed that the sun had already started to rise, and I still hadn't found anything that even vaguely resembled a police station. It's kind of creepy, isn't it? I walked by a girl that was standing nearby. She was watching the crowd from a distance. Yeah, it is. I was glad to hear that someone else was thinking the same thing. An awkward pause followed. I was under the impression that she had wanted to start a conversation, but I guess that wasn't the case. My stomach broke the silence. Are you hungry? Blood shot to my face. It was true that I was feeling starved. Swallowing my pride, I nodded. I have a sandwich with me. You can have it. Are you sure? No worries. I'm not hungry anyways. While I was embarrassed to accept her generosity, I was not embarrassed enough to refuse. I had to hold myself back as not to lunge onto it, but I kept my cool and ate it cautiously as to not embarrass myself. Some of my strength returned to me. In the meanwhile, I decided to ask her about this town. Sorry, I don't really know my way around here that well. Oh, so you're not from here? No, not really. Maybe I can help you look. I'm feeling a bit uneasy being alone here anyways. I glanced back in the direction of the laughing crowd. Sure, I would really appreciate that. I'm Scott, by the way. I'm May. Nice to meet you. We set off to look for help. The idea to call someone I knew from May's phone came back up, but she didn't have it on her phone. She didn't have it on her, unfortunately. We approached several people to ask them for directions or to lend their phones, but all of them seemed to ignore us. I tried to make some small talk with May every now and then, but her replies were always short and didn't leave much room for follow-ups. But she perked up when I asked her about our family. I have a sister. At first, I thought that'll be all I'd get out of her, but she continued after a short pause. She's been home more recently. Usually she'd leave early and return late, or not return home at all for several days. Her job is really important, so it's understandable. But I was really happy when she told me that she wouldn't go to work for a while. I assumed she was finally able to request some time off, but she continued to work even at home. She's doing it to help people, and I'm proud of her, but I still wish we can hang out more. May hung her head. It seemed like I had touched on a sensitive topic. I thought of ways to console her or cheer her up, but I couldn't come up with anything to say. Since I didn't have any siblings, it was hard to relate, but it seemed like she really loved her sister. I could ironically relate more to May's sister, just as her, and I too have barely been home due to my work. And just like her, I'd likely still continue working even if I was home. But as opposed to May's sister, I didn't have any waiting for me back home. I decided against poking any further and instead shifted my focus back to asking people for directions without much luck. Oddly enough, it was as if we were all going in the same direction, the town center. Do you think they're going to see that performer? Silence. Maybe she just hadn't heard me. I turned around to ask her again, but she was nowhere to be seen. Just as I finished that thought, I felt a presence behind me. I slowly turned around. What the hell? What do you think? Do I look funny? What? No, get away from me. I took a few steps back, almost afraid the man would lunge at me. But he didn't. He just stood there with his distorted face. I see. Maybe I didn't do it quite right. And with that, he walked off, almost disappointed. He took a book out of his pocket and started flipping through it. For some rare reason, he seemed familiar. Was that the man in the laughing crowd that I had talked to earlier? This town was giving me the creeps. I needed to get out of here as fast as I could. But as I turned around, I saw that most of the people walking by had distorted their faces in one way or another. It was as if a virus had spread while we were looking for help. Without a second thought, I hurried off. I tried not to look at anyone in the eyes. But wherever I went, these people were everywhere. On top of that, the town seemed to have no end. If I couldn't find a road that led out, no matter how long I searched. Just as I was wondering about what I'd do, I'd recognize someone standing by the side of the road. There you are. You had me worried. Oh, I'm sorry. I had something to take care of. That sounded oddly vague. But I didn't want to be rude, so I dropped it. She did give me a sandwich after all. Did you have any luck finding your way back home? No, still nothing. And on top of that, there are all these weird people walking around. Actually, I know someone who might be able to help. You do? Yes, they don't live far from here. How about I introduce you? And no worries, they don't own a dog. Oh, yeah, sure. Wasn't she new in this town? Maybe she met them while we were separated? And why did she bring up dogs? It's not like I ever told her whether I do or don't mind dogs. Perhaps I said something during my small talk attempts that made her think that way. I considered questioning her, but this was the only lead I had found so far, and I didn't want to lose this chance. We arrived at an old, tall building. I watched May from the corner of my eye. Something seemed different about her. I couldn't quite place the reason why. Perhaps it was just my imagination. We live here on the highest floor. The building is pretty old, and not many people live there anymore, so it's a bit run down. I'd appreciate it if you went first. I didn't protest and led us into the structure. The building was quite desolate, just as she had said. This place made me feel uneasy. I didn't want to stay here any longer than I had to. Not only was I afraid that everything could come down on our heads any minute now, I could only imagine what could lurk in these abandoned halls. I couldn't blame her for wanting me to go first. After climbing a set of stairs, May spoke up again. It should be the door on the end of this hall. I saw the door she was referring to. It's probably the only door in the entire building that wasn't damaged. The clean coat of paint was an eerie contrast in the ravaged environment. And the one living there can help me out? No reply. I turned around and saw nothing. May was gone. Again. She could have at least said goodbye. I walked up to the door to knock, but it was already open. Maybe I had the wrong door after all. Yet, May had seemed certain. What should I do? Enter the apartment or take a look around the building? What should we do? We can take a look. I shouldn't barge into a stranger's home like this. The door being open didn't mean that I could just enter. My eyes wandered around the hallway, scanning it for anything notable. Maybe I could wait for them outside. I noticed that the air in here felt oddly heavy. I made my way back down the hallway when I heard some noise from the ground floor downstairs. Was it another tenant? Maybe they can help me. I wasn't very hopeful considering how bad it has been going so far, but it was worth a shot. Slowly I crept down the steps. I could make out a rhythmic squishy sound that was getting louder and louder. An uneasy feeling was starting to set in my stomach. As I reached the bottom of the stairs, I saw a red trail on the ground. Blood. It must be blood. It led to an apartment. Its door was wide open. My feet froze. The sound was getting louder and more frantic. I needed to get out of this building. Something horrible was happening in there. But to get out to the exit, I had to pass by the door, past the blood trail. I considered going back up, but then I would be leading myself into a dead end. My feet slowly started to move down the last couple steps. Whoever or whatever that was in the room couldn't notice me. Who knew what would happen to me if they did? The squishing became louder and louder, the closer I got. Before long, I was standing right by the open door. The nameplate next to it read Frederick's Diner, a name that seemed oddly familiar. But it didn't matter. I just wanted to get out. I considered quickly running past it, but my curiosity overwhelmed me. I peeked in. The room behind it was almost pitch black. The sole window barely let in any light through. I saw rhythmic movement in the middle of the room. Someone was hunched over something. As the person lifted their head once again, I saw a metallic glint in the light. They were holding a knife. They were stabbing someone over and over again. The techniques in the book are too simple. I don't have time for these childish games if I want to be as funny as the most hilarious one, taking from the faith nonsense. Why just faith? There's so much missed potential. This is exactly what my studies have been leading up to. She just doesn't get it, but I do. I'll show her what it means to be funny. They were whispering to themselves in a gurgling voice. I had no idea what they were talking about. They must have gone mad. I stepped away, ready to leave this building for good, but my foot slipped on the wet blood. I managed to catch myself and avoid falling, but I couldn't avoid making a sound. The movement inside the room suddenly stopped. Silence. Then their heads slowly turned my way. Who's there? The person frantically shook their grotesque head around. It seemed like they couldn't see me past all of that face modifications. The various body parts fused with their skin wiggled like worms crawling out of their head. Is that you, Sabrina? Have you come to your senses? Have you finally realized that this is the only way to make an actually funny face? Look at me. Soon I will be the most hilarious one. And then, his breathing was getting even heavier than before. They went back to dismantling the body in front of them. I was safe. They really couldn't see me. I was safe. Slowly I breathed out and had held my breath without noticing. Trying not to make a sound, I stepped over the blood trail and very cautiously made my way towards the exit. I definitely didn't want to get caught. Soon I was finally in front of the exit door. I could finally get out. But just as I was about to grab the handle, a sudden wave of fatigue came over me. It was as if I had stepped into a veil. The air had gotten heavier and my breathing became more ragged. I clutched my chest as I tried to figure out what was going on. A throbbing pain pulsed through my arm. It was as if something had stabbed me. I tried to turn around, but I had already became too weak. My feet gave in and my vision darkened. I could feel a presence near me, the person from the apartment. Before I could find out, my consciousness faded. Oh. And that was Act 2, Faces.